Wait, it's a lost paradise. I've been calling it Paradise Lost this whole time. I called it that the whole way through the... Oh, God.
Everybody's thinking about me, but I feel alright. Everybody's out again, but I feel alright.
Fist of the North Star Paradise Lost is a bloody great game. One of the most fun experiences I've had with a game in a ruddy bloody long time. It's basically Yakuza, and when I say that, I mean it is exactly Yakuza, and that's not a problem. Kenshiro wanders around the city of Eden, which serves the exact same purpose as Kamurocho in the Yakuza series. It's full of little shops to go into, it's full of side activities, and it's full of gangs of thugs who you mercilessly beat up, and you make their heads explode. Now, you couldn't do that in Yakuza, of course, but this wouldn't be a Fist of the North Star game if Kenshiro couldn't punch people so hard their heads blow up. The Yakuza team at Sega are known for making an inherently absurd series that can take itself seriously when it needs to, which makes it the perfect fit for an utterly ludicrous series like Fist of the North Star. I've always loved Fist of the North Star conceptually because it's just so stupid. I'm not saying it doesn't have some serious storytelling in it, but the entire premise of this stoic man who wanders around the apocalypse, punching people and telling them while they stand there that they're already dead before bits of them blow apart. It's hilarious. It always makes me laugh, especially when it freeze frames and tells you the name of the move. It's some long-winded, extravagant move name, some secret hidden technique. And don't worry, this game does that. You'll be able to punch someone into a vulnerable state, hit a pressure point, and then pull off some gory, beautifully disgusting, violent move, and then the whole game will freeze to tell you what it is, and for me, it never gets old. I'll have an excited man yell Hokuto steel shredding clench at me all day long. It's a match made in heaven to the point where one wonders why this didn't happen sooner, but now that it did, I'm incredibly grateful that Sega and the Hokuto Apocalypse are one at last, because Fist of the North Star Paradise Lost is brilliant. So very much like the Yakuza series, there's a central story that's well written and, fairly serious, and then there are all sorts of sub-stories that you can do, wacky mini-games. In this game in particular, there's a driving section. You can go out into the wasteland and collect materials, fight wasteland raiders, discover new areas with even more silly games. You can play baseball, with the baseball bat being an iron girder that Kenshiro picked up, and the balls being bandits hurtling towards you on motorbikes, and you whack them and see how far you can knock them through the air, because of course. There's a gladiator coliseum where you can fight groups of enemies or take part in one-on-one duels. There's a clinic where you can take part in a rhythm game as Kenshiro uses his magical fists to cure the sick and of course punch to bits any villains that have wandered in. As you might expect from an open city Sega game, there is a dense amount of content to unpack here. Loads of little distractions and side quests and mini-games, various stores you can wander into, all sorts of rewards to be discovered, and all of it's fantastic fun. There is no way you could get bored here unless you don't like the core gameplay to begin with. Paradise Lost is the type of game that knows exactly what it's doing with its space and wastes none of it. It's nowhere near as big as other open-world AAA video games, but it doesn't need to be. The smaller space has so much more to do in it that it's an inherently quote-unquote bigger game than a lot of these massive open sprawls.
Mix, 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 mix. Perfect. You are already drunk.
And a special highlight must go to the Bartender Ken minigame, in which you mix drinks for various customers. This minigame involves shaking the controller in order to shake a cocktail glass, or pressing the buttons in a certain order to smash up ice, or rotating the stick to mix something. And the reward for doing this is Kenshiro performing his bartending duties with the same intensity that he performs his murderous combat moves. He'll stand there mixing a drink going mix, 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 before unveiling some hilariously named cocktail, and I at one point was punching the air yelling yes at just how over the top and downright funny these cocktails were. Fist of the North Star Paradise Lost embraces the concept of pure dumb fun. It is a dumb game, but that's what makes it so damn good. The side quests preserve the Yakuza series' quirky, stupid sense of humour. The stories that you can go down that are all entirely optional have their own unique little tales to tell, and they're often genuinely amusing because this game knows exactly what Fist of the North Star is, and it balances the overall seriousness of Kenshiro's character with the utter nonsense that is the world he's in and the things he does. It takes Kenshiro's abilities with the Hokuto Shinken martial arts style and boosts everything to downright mimetic levels in a fantastic manner. But how is that combat system? Well, again, not to keep bringing up Yakuza, it is basically Yakuza's combat, but that is fine because it's a great combat system. Using simple button combinations, you'll punch and kick your way through colourful goons, and when you weaken them enough, you can press their pressure points to unlock a variety of moves. All your favourites are there, the YakuzATATATATATA is there, you can break their bones, you can blow up their arms, you can of course make the heads expand and go all sorts of places. To get the most out of Kenshiro's techniques, you'll need to perform some QTEs mid-combat, but even they're quite fun. They only add to the intensity of the battle, and because they're quite simple QTEs, you're only pressing one or two buttons here and there in time with the prompts. They're very fast and therefore don't break the flow of the gameplay at all. They only add to it, which is pretty friggin' rare for a QuickTime event. As you continue to play, you continue to unlock new moves, of course, and new boosts to Kenshiro's basic stats. Before too long, you'll be able to hit pressure points, then hit that button again to instantly blow an enemy up, which is never not satisfying. And when you do those perfect channeling point strikes, sometimes the enemy will let out a death scream that will leave the words that they used to scream on the floor, and you can pick their scream up and hit people with it. Yes, Kenshiro is so good at hitting people, he can hit people to death with the screams of people that he's already hit to death. God damn, I fucking love this game. My only complaint about the combat, and this might be my only complaint about the game overall, is that some enemy types seem designed not to be challenging, but just to be a king-size pain in the arse. If you're unlucky enough to get a configuration of enemies that involve pokey spear people and giant hammer dudes, you're in for a bad time, because they love to constantly jab you so you hit the floor and have to mash a button to get back up just in time for some other prick to hit you with their weapon. And punch and kick your way around them, dash to the side, block them just in time, counter their moves by breaking all the bones in their arm. It's an incredible cliche by now to play a licensed game and say, it really makes you feel like whatever character the game's about. But Paradise Lost utterly nails what it's like to be an over-the-top badass in a colourful 80s apocalypse. You could say it really makes you feel like Kenshiro. What else has this friggin' game got? It's got Destiny Talismans. You can make and equip talismans based on characters from the Fist of the North Star mythos, and they'll give you special abilities like Toki's Destiny Talisman lets you perform some super moves that will instantly kill most enemies and deal incredible damage to bosses. Jaggy's Talisman, I do love Jaggy. Jaggy's Talisman lets you reduce your health but gain Destiny stars. Oh, and the stars, yeah, there's a star meter that you fill up by dealing damage, and when that's full you can enter Burst Mode, which increases your attacks and unlocks some special techniques of its own. I personally recommend you take a look at the Mind skill tree because that has abilities pertaining to Burst Mode, and at first you might not think you'll rely on Burst Mode too much or you'll want to save it, but as Kenshiro levels up, you'll find you're filling that meter up quite quickly, and there are some really good abilities in there. If anything, you'll want the power to jump up in the air and smash back down in an area of effect attack because that just saves time. Remember, Kenny's so good at jumping, he will make people blow up. You can choose between Japanese or English voiceovers if you're not one for localization. I grew up on those old films, the old manga videos that were out in the UK that only ever had the bad dubs. So I've got a bit of a soft spot for that, and the voice acting in this one isn't so bad. For the most part, they found the right actors to play the right characters, but if you're not a fan of that, just switch over to the Japanese actors. The soundtrack is suitably cheesy, and while the graphics are not exactly high high-end, they're colourful, they're bright, they look nice enough, and the combat moves are just fantastic. They look so gloriously overkill. I will say that the flesh textures of every character is a little bit off-putting. They look like they're covered in a heavy amount of makeup, possibly used to obscure extreme skin burns. This game has everything a Fist of the North Star fan could want, and more, because I don't think many Fist of the North Star fans were thinking, you know what, I really need a hostess management simulator in my Fisty North Stars. But you got it, you have that, and you don't even know how lucky you are. You have that, and you have a small wasteland to explore in a buggy, and you have a range of races to take part in with your buggy, and you can customize your buggy and make it bright pink like I did. This game has it all, and it's one of the most brilliantly entertaining times I've had in a long ass time. Maybe since the last Yakuza game. It's shameless, it's hilarious, it is so filled with things to do. And maybe it's the way Eden's designed, but I find that the unlocking of content and the discovery of sub-stories and side quests and mini-games is just that bit more accessible and fluid than even the mainline Yakuza games, making this my favourite thing that team's ever done. And considering I already hold the Yakuza games in very high esteem, that says a lot. I merrily, happily give this game 100 fists out of 100. Literally, the only complaint I can think of is the aforementioned annoyance of enemies that only happens here and there, so really, I ain't got nothing to complain about at all. Brilliant, 2 thumbs up, and then those thumbs jammed in the side of your head, which will then blow up.
Man, I don't know what I ever did without you.